Welcome to the Indie Lens pop-up virtual film screening and conversation. Tonight, our conversation will be based on the film you just watched, Philly DA. Milwaukee PBS is the host of today's event in partnership with the John Michael Kohler Art Center and with support from ITVS, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and PBS. Philly DA is an 8-part series that details the dramatic work inside the office of Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner as he and his team work to end mass incarceration and transform the criminal justice system from the inside. Philly DA provides a rare opportunity to observe the criminal legal system and its decision makers up close, including progressive prosecutors featured that are out to create change. Tonight, we hope that we can contribute to the dialogue about challenges and changes that our own system in Milwaukee encounters and needs, and as we recognize and celebrate together the importance of our communities. Today, we have 2 guests that are joining us via Zoom. And so to introduce them, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Judge Milton Childs. Judge Childs serves in the Milwaukee County Circuit Court, and his current judicial assignment is General Felony Court. Prior to his appointment, he was an attorney manager with the Wisconsin State Public Defender's Office, assigned to the Milwaukee Juvenile and Mental Health Office. He is the former Equal Employment Opportunity and Affirmative Action Officer for the Wisconsin State Public Defender. He has facilitated trainings nationally in several areas of law, implicit bias, and prison reentry, among many other accomplishments. Also with us tonight is Deshelle Parker. Parker is the Deputy Administrator in the Division of Youth and Family Services for the Milwaukee County Department of Health and Human Services. She is also the Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative Site Coordinator for the Casey Foundation. Parker is recognized as a national expert in the area of youth justice, facilitating webinars in conjunction with the Urban Institute Justice Center and Council of State Governments Justice Center on topics relating to implementation of evidence-based practices in youth justice. Additionally, she works in partnership with the Robert F. Kennedy National Resource Center for Juvenile Justice and Justice Transformation Projects. Good evening. Thank you both for being here with us today. And to our audience, we like to encourage you to ask questions by using our chat box. So we'll get started with our guests with a few questions that we already have. So to kick us off, Judge Childs, did you see any similar type of trends in the film that we see in Milwaukee as well?
I did, and I think what was interesting, Milwaukee is kind of where Philadelphia is trying to get to in regards to some of the areas. We're not there yet in all the areas, but for example, diversion was one of the topics that was discussed in the film. In Milwaukee, we're very fortunate. We have several diversion programs, I think, that have been very helpful in regarding to trying to avoid certain prosecutions. Another area that was mentioned in the film was not prosecuting low-level crimes. And I think that was another area, it is another area in Milwaukee where we've been pretty successful in certain lower-level drug cases, as well as like retail theft. In those cases, the goal at this point is to avoid those kind of prosecutions. I also wanted to know that in regards to community involvement, that appeared to be a big area where ultimately the DA in Philly he had a lot of support from the community. And the film talked about these progressive DAs, and I think at this point we've been pretty fortunate. DA Chisholm, I think, was one of those DAs that came in under this progressive DA that were occurring across the country, in regards to individuals that thought differently than former DAs. And that community involvement was one of the things that I think is very successful in regards to our legal system. Right now, we have what we call the Milwaukee Community Justice Council. And they meet monthly, and they're able to provide this connection between the community and the legal system. But the community they have monthly discussions with our judges, with the sheriffs, with the police chiefs, with DA, and they're able to kind of vent and share concerns that they definitely have. So we're not there yet, but I think definitely we are a little further along than Philly.
And another question to you, Judge. The film discusses people who have an outstanding warrant or who may not have had paid a fine and are placed in jail. Would you say that you see a significant amount of people in this such situation before you go into court?
I don't, in my current assignment, and I think with me, a lot of the individuals with warrants have to do with them missing court or not following the conditions of release. But I think in the county itself, I think we're successful. I think there are two areas. First, in municipal court, the municipal court judges have done a great job in removing a lot of the warrants that individuals receive and setting fines instead of jail sentences. And they've also worked with a lot of individuals in regards to allowing them to get their driver's license, which for a lot of people creates the fines and ultimately then it creates the jail. And then in regards from the circuit court standpoint, especially within the last year under COVID, we've been able to, a lot of individuals with misdemeanor and low-level felony cases, they get signature bonds. And unless they miss court, for the most part, most of them get signature bonds. Or if they do get a cash bond, they definitely have a right to come in front of the court to ask for a modification of their bail. Also within the last year, the court system has worked pretty closely with other law enforcement agencies within our area, and pretty much for all misdemeanor warrants, except for DV and those that are firearm surrender type cases. If there's a misdemeanor warrant, law enforcement has agreed not to take these individuals into custody, but actually have them contact their attorney or the public defender's office to set up an opportunity to set up a return on a bench warrant. We probably should have been doing this years ago, especially with these misdemeanor cases. So the COVID has kind of forced us to kind of think differently. And the goal ultimately long-term is to kind of still have this mindset in regards to these type of cases.
And I think that applies to pretty much any industry or business of things that could have been done earlier, but COVID pushing people to think differently faster. So moving on to you, Deshelle, what youth programs are you working with to try to change some of these statistics and challenges?
Thank you for the question. First, let me thank you again for the opportunity to be here. And when it comes to youth justice here in Milwaukee, what we're doing is really trying to focus on evidence-informed methods, things like growth-focused case management. It is actually something that's homegrown, that's been built here in Milwaukee with the help of a consultant, and it's really around a harm reduction model and desistance when it comes to youth offending and helping the system actually work with youth to naturally grow out of it and support those processes rather than traditionally looking just at recidivism, whether or not they come back, but actually paying attention to some of the things that are changing while we're involved with them. There's a number of other programs such as credible messengers or other restorative practices, even seeking supportive job initiatives and things of that nature. Credible Messengers, I think, is an amazing transformative mentoring program that has a lot of elements in it that are very different. The concept itself is not new. It's the concept of having folks with lived experience actually be the mentors and the guides to youth who are falling into our system, and then having them lead them the way out of it, if you will. And so there's a combination of both transformative mentoring happening as well as restorative justice in action happening at the same time. And you have not traditionally seen systems invest in something like this and try to break down barriers to this process. So that's something I'm extremely proud to know that we're embarking on now and that we're doing differently when it comes to the way we're engaging youth in our programs.
Very interesting as far as the mentoring component from people who have also lived that life, making it more relatable and seeing not to this is me and don't be like this, but just people that are able to connect at a deeper level.
It's more credible.
Exactly. Another question to you, Deshelle, what seems to be the most effective method of working with this group of youth? Is it that mentoring program that you had just mentioned, or is it something else?
I actually think it's a combination of things, but it definitely includes that mentoring. At the end of the day, we have to rely on what the science and the principles is telling us when it comes to adolescent brain development. We have to pay attention to that, because if it was our own children at home, the things that we know that they can do and the things we expect them to do, we do based on their actual development. So youth in the youth justice system are no different. We have to do that. And we have tons of research that help us actually focus on positive transformation, how to leverage their strengths, how to actually look at both evidence-based programs such as cognitive behavioral therapy and the CBT dose, but also things like homegrown mentoring. Those things that I just talked about, like credible messengers, those are extremely powerful. At the end of the day, we're trying to build really good relationships, help them develop skills, help them manage their emotions, and leverage strengths. Because we all want that collective goal to be able to have young people make better decisions and to have safer communities. And it's a lot of different ways to approach that. But what we're focusing on is the research informed and the science and the principles around what we now know, and trying to create processes that actually support that.
Thank you, Disha. So a question to both of you. Obviously, the legal system is there for a reason, to prevent crime from happening. So how can we prevent crime from happening, but also keeping youth accountable, or people in general accountable, while still trying to do things in a different way?
Well, my first response would be to tell the truth. The system was never designed to actually prevent crime. It was designed to react to crime. So that if we're collaboratively actually telling the truth and empowering folks around what is actually going on and engaging the community, then we have to actually reinvest in communities that have been disproportionately impacted by this. At the end of the day, unless you look upstream and focus on the determinants and the things that are actually contributing to this environment, then we're never going to get anywhere. And we have to strategize collectively. We have to involve the community, and we have to tell the truth about the system and what it is designed to do and what it can and cannot do.
And I agree with Ms. Parker. And I think Wisconsin did a good job for many years in the punitive side and locking up people. And I think everybody agrees at this point that that just did not work. And there were so many people harmed by that part of it. The juvenile justice system, part of the goal of it is rehabilitation. If you look at the statutes, it talks about providing an individual assessment for each juvenile that comes through that system. And I think we need to go back to that, individualizing the treatment, individualizing all the services that each juvenile needs. And part of it is, they use the term, there's an agency that wrap around, but sometimes to get to and to assist the child, you have to assist the family. And the family may need treatment, the family may need the services, the family may need social needs, the family may need job training. And I think that helps to kind of create and assist the entire family. And mentoring, I think, is a big part that was mentioned also by Ms. Parker. And I think a lot of it also, it's similar to the adults. Unfortunately, there are a lot of individuals in the adult system that have untreated mental health needs. And I think that needs to be addressed, it needs to be dealt with as well. And then job training is very important. You see a lot of people without high school diplomas. A lot of people that come to my court have 9th, 10th, and 11th grade education. We have to do something to get them back excited about finishing that and get them to go on. I liked the attorney on the film noted that for juvenile justice, we need to be patient. We need to have empathy. And then she noted that we need to allow kids to grow out of it. And sometimes I think as adults, we forget about what we did as juveniles. And most of us have grown out of it. For the most part, the recidivism rate is pretty low for juvenile cases. And we just have to be patient, provide the services for them, and kind of let them grow out of the behavior that they're going through at the time.
Very real. Thank you both for your answers to that question. What are some changes you both would like to see in the legal system here in Milwaukee? And we can start with Disha.
Thank you. What I would like to start with is really focusing as a system on education and awareness, and actually putting action where we need to put action. I can say there's a lot of committees, there's a lot of discussion, but it's not always a lot of movement around making actual changes. So what I would like to see is education around all of the system players, who they are. One of the things that was mentioned in the film that is similar or just the same here in Milwaukee with the youth justice system is the power of the prosecutor. And one of the specific statements in the film was the community member saying that in our community, the running for the prosecutor is just as important as the presidential election. And those are the kind of things that people don't understand when it comes to the actual system. You see folks paying attention to law enforcement and usually probation officers a lot of times, but then it's lots of other players. There's judiciary, there's lots of things. And I think folks don't really understand how the system works. And I think understanding, education, awareness, peeling those things back so that we can collaborate better, break down the silos, but I think at the core of it, with youth justice, what I would like to see is due process.
And in regards to me, the last few years before becoming a judge, I really had a chance to work closely with a lot of people, individuals that had mental health issues that were caught in the justice system. And a lot of them were in the jail. And at one point, people were placed in jail instead of placed in hospitals or placed in treatment. And it allowed them to deteriorate. So that definitely is something we're coming around the corner with that. I think a lot of people are more aware in regards to how we have to treat people with mental health issues differently. I'm encouraged by law enforcement. Many of them, not at this point, have received training in regards to how to deal with those with mental health issues differently. Then even with the DA's office, they have a different mindset also in regards to prosecuting individuals with mental health issues. And then part of it just becomes access. So I think as a community, we have to allow people with those issues to be treated within a community, not sent to hospitals, not sent to Mendota or outside the city, but to treat them within the system and not treat them in the jail. We have to make sure that they are able to get those services within the community.
Thank you. Something that stood out to me in the film was that Larry Krasner had really strong community ties and was pretty much the opposite of what the traditional DA had been for a long time in Philadelphia. And one of the things he said was that it was good to be on the side of power instead of the side of outrage, right? Being able to sit in the seat and make those decisions. And both of you all's experience and thoughts, I'm curious, do you think that you're able to make radical change within a system that has been in existence so long? Do you feel that you're able to make radical change while still being a part of the system? Do you both feel that way in your positions, that you're actually able to implement radical change if you're a part of the system?
Well, I'll definitely start by acknowledging the fact that I'm a Black woman in America working in the justice system. And is it a challenge? Yes, it is. But it's also a part of my calling, and it's a part of my purpose for being here. What I can honestly say about the youth justice system right now is that we have got this national evolution happening in the justice system right now in both the youth and the adult worlds. In Milwaukee, we are leading the nation with our declaration of racism as a public health crisis and doing something, moving the needle in that. We're also in the middle of a global pandemic. We got a racial justice and equity movement happening right now. And the current Health and Human Services Administration is one that I'm actually currently proud to be a part of. There is movement and things happening in the youth justice system that have never happened before. And we've got the perfect storm aligning to create change. I wouldn't want to be in any other seat than the one I'm in right now. I want to harness that power and I want to do something different. At the end of the day, a story will be told 10, 20, 50 years from now. My legacy will be something that I can be proud of. And as a Black woman working within the justice system, I can sit here and I can say that, and I can say I'm proud for that. So yes, I'm in the system and I feel like I can make a powerful change within the system because it's my calling and it's my purpose. There's also others who have callings and purposes outside of the system. And at the end of the day, we need us all.
I agree as well. That was an interesting point in regards to it works both ways. I think somebody in and out the system. Definitely, I believe that I can make a difference also by being part of the system. And then even if it's a little difference, it's interesting as individuals, especially when I was first appointed, people will walk into your courtroom and they would see me sitting on the bench. And for so many of them, I mean, just to see somebody that looks like them, I may not agree with everything that they want, but just to see somebody that looks like them and that I'm hearing them and to hear their story. And for me, that's the most important part, especially as I sentence. Part of what I want to do is to hear an individual story. I see what's on paper in the complaint and I hear one side of the story, but there's so much more that needs to be said. And I think that's what so many people in our community just have not had a chance to have people hear their story and then take their story into consideration ultimately when when they have to be held accountable. So yes, I definitely believe that I can make a difference as being involved in this system.
And just a reminder to audience members, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But otherwise, I don't have any more questions. I just wanted to ask if there's anything that I did not ask either of you that you wanted to include, or something I may have not brought up and you feel like it's pertinent or important to share with our viewers.
One of the things I would just like to point out during this time is the need to focus on the upstream, the social determinants. So one of the biggest challenges we have, and it was mentioned earlier today, I believe, by the judge when we talked about the family, engaging the family, like we have individuals that we come into contact with for reasons related to the justice system. However, they are a part of a family. They're part of a larger system. And if we're not engaging the family and trying to break down those systematic barriers that actually contribute to why they're there in the first place, then we're going to keep spinning on that hamster wheel. Because I think one of the major things that was said in the movie, and I just love this quote, the job base. People who have jobs, viable jobs that are able to take care of their families are not out committing crimes.
Yeah, I agree.
So we have to pay attention to the things that are bringing people into the system and not blame them and be punitive for the reasons that they're there. But let's peel back those layers and figure out how they got there and how we break that down. Because we talked about the justice system being in place as a whole system to prevent crime. But most of the things that we do are a reaction to crime. You have to get in trouble to get into the justice system. So by nature of the way it's designed as a reaction. So there needs to be more focus on the community, more building up of before you even get to our doors.
Right, and as Ms. Parker mentioned earlier, this is the time. I think people are excited. They want to become involved. A lot of them have the time to become involved now too, which is good. And we've seen it, again, we noted earlier in regards to what's been happening over the last year. There have been collaborations with people who normally don't talk to each other, that they're willing to talk now because they see the need for some type of change. I know within our system, again, it's very adversarial, but at one point, because of all of the COVID cases that were popping up in the jail, the goal, we had to limit the number of people in jail. So that meant parties had to talk. The DA had to talk with the public defender and they had to talk with the jail staff. And we were able to review hundreds of cases to determine who could be released, who could we modify the bill with. And I think these conversations need to continue to happen, whatever this new post-COVID world is going to look like. We just have to continue to talk and collaborate with each other for the best of the community.
Thank you both for those final thoughts. And that takes us to the end of today's program. Many thanks to our guests, Judge Milton Childs and Deshelle Parker, for sharing their experiences and views with us today. And thank you all so much for joining in with us tonight. Philly DA premieres and streams on PBS's Independent Lens on Tuesday, April 20th at 8 p.m. on Milwaukee PBS. And join us for the last Independent Lens virtual screening and conversation on May 12th at 10 a.m. or 5:30 p.m. for the preview of The Donut King. For registration and information, visit milwaukeepbs.org/events. And a final thank you to our supporters and partners, Independent Lens, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, PBS, ITVS, and the John Michael Kohler Art Center. Thank you all for joining us and have a good night.